Now let's move on to the next session on the theme of leading VCs and CVCs from 5 Southeast Asian countries share latest ecosystem information and expectations for Japanese companies. This session is powered by Jetro. The panelists are Mr. Teng Ling Ko, ST Engineering Ventures Head. Ms. Vi Lee, Do Ventures General Partner. Mr. Matt Van Leeuwen, Sunway Chief Innovation Officer. Mr. Bayu Seto, Living Lab Ventures, Sinarmas Land Partner. The session is moderated by Mr. Kentaro Machi, Area Jetro Program Manager on Startup Ecosystem Area.
Myself?
And the moderator of this session is Mr. Kentaro Machi, Jetro Program Manager on Startup Ecosystem Area. Mr. Machi, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are really excited to kick off this panel discussion. I'm Machi from Ariel. As a secondment from Jetro, I'm responsible for Ariel's startup initiative across ASEAN region. So today, we are inviting the 4 distinguished panelists from ASEAN countries. So before we start the discussion, we want to start this session with the introduction from each panelist to understand their business or initiative better for your audience. So the first introduction will be by V, Do Venture from Vietnam. Can you start your introduction?
Clicker?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is V, and it's my pleasure to be here, and thank you, the organizer, for inviting me to the stage. Before I begin, I would like the audience to get to know me a bit better. So my name is V Lê. I was born and raised in Vietnam. I made my first dollars when I was 7 years old. I started my first company when I was 13. It was a web design company. I launched my first tech platform when I was 22. It was the first fashion e-commerce platform in Vietnam. And when I was 27, I had my first major exit. And when I was 31 years old, I started making investment as a professional venture capitalist in Vietnam. And 5 years ago, when I was 33 years old, I founded my first VC fund in Vietnam. So I just shared with you my secret, my real age. And about Do Ventures, we raised $50 million in 2020. And we were very lucky to be able to work with many reputable limited partners around the world, including JAFCO in Japan. We also work with many entities from the Korean government, including KDB. We also work with Temasek subsidiary called Vertex Holding, and some of the corporates in Korea and Singapore as well. And for Do Ventures, we mainly invest in technological companies that enable the life of young customers. At the same time, we also want to focus on supporting SMEs, and we try to provide them with digitalization services. At the same time, we're trying to give them access to financing solutions. And throughout the past 5 years, we were very lucky because we were able to invest in many rising startups in Vietnam. Notably, we made one investment in a company called Manabi. Manabi was founded by a Japanese entrepreneur in Vietnam. And he started the business in Vietnam, but then he also expanded the business offering to Japan. and now he operates in many countries besides Vietnam and Japan. We also invested in Vietnamese-based company, but try to offer product and services to Japanese market. The first one is Palexi. They already partner with Hakuodo in Japan, and they're now trying to expand their AI visual analytics solution to more Japanese company. Another company is Finhei. They're also trying to partner with Japanese company to develop more products to the Vietnam market. And last but not least, we're trying to co-invest with many Japanese funds. So we make 4 co-investments with Japanese funds in Vietnam. And beyond our current ecosystem, I want to highlight the support that we do for Japanese company and startups to enter the Vietnam market. So they can definitely tap on our existing portfolio company, and we have a very robust customer base and merchant base that can offer cross-sales and channel partnership opportunities to any of the Japanese company entering Vietnam. Beyond that, we organize some of the largest tech events in Vietnam, and we can have access to a broader community. We can also foster collaboration for Japanese company with conglomerates and corporates in Vietnam. And most importantly, we work with many ministries in Vietnam, including the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Science and Technology, and we can help Japanese company to understand the regulatory landscape in Vietnam. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, B. So next, I want to invite Tan from ST Engineering Ventures in Singapore.
Hi. A very good afternoon to the audience. I'm Ting Lip. So I am responsible for the corporate venture capital unit of ST Engineering. Before I talk about STE Ventures, maybe just a bit about ST Engineering itself, since a CVC program very specific to the context of the corporate, right? So for ST Engineering, who we are. So we are basically a global technology, defense and engineering group. So we have many businesses across 3 main domains, which I'll talk about later, mainly aerospace, smart cities, as well as defense and public security. We are the largest engineering company in Singapore. We are listed on the Singapore Stock Exchange, 51% owned by Temasek, the sovereign wealth fund of Singapore. So we have businesses across the group, across the world, 50% in Asia, 1/4 in US, 20% in Europe. We clock about 11 billion in terms of revenues in 2024. So like I mentioned earlier, we have 3 main clusters: commercial, aerospace, smart cities, as well as defense and public security. And you can see the various divisions that we have under each of the, what we call the cluster. So we have a very broad-based business across the group. But what is important is that, more information about our group is that we were actually founded in 1967, listed in 1997. Globally, we have about 27,000 people, 19,000 engineers. So what's important is that for the group, even though our businesses are very diverse, we always use technology as well as innovation to solve real-world problems. That is how we look at technology. So now a bit about STEV. So basically, in the middle, we have Singapore. So we are Singapore Incorporated fund. And then we have offices in London as well as offices in the US. So for us, what is important is that the key objective for STEV is that we keep track and inform the group of market and technology trends. Second is that we engage startups for collaboration globally. So for many of the Japanese startups who want to work with us, please approach me or my colleague Sikit, who's actually sitting down there. And then we also invest in startups, especially when we want to build new businesses and products. So for us, we're a $150 million fund. We can lead deal, we can syndicate deal, but typically we lead about 70% of the time when we invest. Check size up to about 10-15 million US per startup, but typically our first check is in the 4 to 8 million range. So we invest up to about Series B, depending on country. In the US, you can go much earlier, but in Asia, we can go much later. For us, when we invest, it's always strategic. There must be some sort of rationale or some sort of collaboration with our business units. But at the same time, we do have a pot whereby we invest in startups that are important to the group, but currently we may not have the business unit to work with the group yet. And lastly, when we work with the startup, it's always on a win-win situation. It's either to integrate or co-develop solutions together, and in return, many times the startup can actually leverage onto our global networks. We can do G2M together. Then in terms of the focus areas to look at, mainly in the deep tech space, B2B space, B2G space, enterprise. So things we focus on is autonomous technologies, IoT, communications, robotics, DAI, cybersecurity, cloud, sustainability, and increasingly new materials, advanced manufacturing, things like that. So for STV, we also do venture building. Half the team actually do venture building, so we actually build new businesses for the group from 0 to 1. So we have been working with many startups. We have been investing in quite a number of startups across the world. Typically, one type of portfolio is from US, one third from Israel, one third from Europe and Asia. We haven't done anything in Japan yet. We hope to change that very soon. So together with a startup, we actually build new businesses or co-create new products together, whether it's in the digital space, cybersecurity space, communications, connected vehicles, or even certain emerging technologies. Not limited to those categories, but those are the areas where I've been working with many startups on. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. So next, I want to invite Bayu from Raven Venture in Indonesia.
Thank you, Machi-san. So good afternoon, Tokyo. So let me share you a 3-minute story on what is and who is Living Life Ventures. So Living Life Ventures is part of Sinamas Group, one of the largest conglomerate company in Indonesia. We provide 380,000 jobs a year. And we own 100% by Sinamas Land, a leaders in the property sectors, the company that has presence in 7 countries around the globe, and they have a full stack of property products. You name it, office building, mall, residential, estate, golf, trade centers, full stack. But actually, the main positioning of Sinamas Land is not as a property developers company, but we are a city builders. So we literally creating a cities rather than creating only the properties. And the flagship cities, the crown jewel of the project, is a city that we call a BSD city. The city where Apple put the second Apple Academy in APEC located, because the first located in Tokyo. So the second located in BSD city. A 6,000 hectares similar just like a Yamanote Line area, 10% of Singapore's, with more than 500,000 population, day and night population in the cities. And it's a very younger generation. So 30 until 40% is a younger population. Still keep growing. The city where Microsoft Experience Center is located, the city where NEC just established its experience centers, and also the entity experience centers located in the cities. It's a closed loop cities and managed by Sinamas Land. Then having the city, of course, has a different gameplay than having a properties. When you are talking about the operational metric for the properties, occupancies, but having the cities, we do believe on 2 things. How to give some innovation into the cities, but the most important things, how to create economic for the cities. Because we've been building the cities from the scratch. So the economic should be theirs to make the city sustainable, self-funded. So for years ago, that's the idea coming. That's why Living Life Ventures has a mandate to create innovation for the cities, but on the same token also create economic, the new economic for the cities. By how? Number 1, we do investment. So we already deploy more than 160 million at the moment, invest into 40 until 50 companies, and bring the mandatory establishment in the cities to create a new economic for the cities. Number 2, we also do a global partnership, engaging a global agencies just like JETRO to attract many companies, right, to have some JV with us, again, to create economic and enjoy the vibrance of the cities. And as a request, so what is the program that we offer for our Japan's potential partners. Sorry? Okay, so we are creating a Japan thematic fund that is dedicated for any Japan corporation that want to tap the Indonesian and Southeast Asia market, especially. The fund will very interesting. The fund will invest into the Southeast Asia startup, but the startup need to engage the Japan corporation to increase the product adoption in Southeast Asia. And the fund also will invest into Japan startup that want to expand to Southeast Asia. This is a very game changer. Number one, to increase the Japan product adoption in Southeast Asia. Number two, to strengthen the economic relationship between Japan and also Southeast Asia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bayu. So lastly, I want to invite Matt from Sunway I Love in Malaysia for your introduction.
Right. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. As you notice, I'm the last speaker and probably the least Southeast Asian looking person on the panel here. So I'm the Chief Innovation Officer in Sunway Group, and I also run the Sunway Innovation Labs, which is the innovation arm and the corporate venture capital arm of the Sunway Group. So today, actually, I'm very keen to meet with other startups, that we can collaborate with, potential other corporates, and also venture capitalists that we partner with. So I've been in Malaysia for the last 16 years already. Maybe can I see a show of hands of people who've been to Malaysia before? Quite a lot. How many people have been to Sunway City? Oh, still quite a few. For the rest who've never been, welcome you to come over, and we're happy to host you there. So the story about Sunway City is quite interesting because it used to be an old mining land. So you can imagine, you can see in the picture, barren land, moon crater, nothing grew. And our founder, he had a vision to turn that old wasteland, as we call it, into almost a wonderland, right? Into a sustainable, integrated city as it is today. But it wasn't like that before. So when he was a founder and he was an entrepreneur, nobody believed that he could do it. Nobody wanted to invest in him. There was no venture capitalists and that sort of thing. Only one banker gave him a $30,000 check, and he proved to be right. And that banker is still sitting on our board of directors. So the different business units that we have, 13 in total, span from construction, development, we have theme parks, hotels, we have an education group with 25,000 students. And really what this is, so for entrepreneurs in the audience, this is like a playground, right? This could be your playground, where we want to engage with you to validate technologies, to mentor you, and to guide you to how to scale this up, leveraging the ecosystem that we have. Sunway iLabs was born 8 years ago as a platform to work with student entrepreneurs, to work with tech startups, also to work with other industry players and help grow innovations from the ground up. Now, in terms of the areas that we're looking into, you can imagine we invest in a lot of synergistic areas, like your health tech, property technology, construction, but we're also looking into the future. And the future is a lot about energy transition. In the teams around data centers, we're looking into quantum, deep tech, AI. So anyone in the audience who is building innovations in these fields, please come and talk to me afterwards. The three verticals that we have is on education. Like I mentioned earlier, we have an education group with 25,000 students, and we want to provide them also with a platform to learn, to build startups, and to help scale them up. We also run cross-border programs, and we have a very good program running for the last 6 years with JETRO, where we've incubated more than 30 Japanese startups. We ran more than 14 pilots. Those startups went to raise about 20 million ringgit after they went through the program. And just to market this a little bit, we have a new program upcoming, and I think the applications will finish in the next sort of 1.5, 2 months. So please talk to my JETRO friends around it. And finally, we do the investments. We don't just partner with companies, introduce them to our ecosystem, and then stay behind. No, we have a vested interest into the companies, and we invest directly from our own funds and through other venture funds that we've invested in. And so far, we built about 81 startups. So we do check sizes of as small as $25,000 through our accelerator program, through CVC deals of a few $100,000 to $50 million in a single check in a company called Carson, which is a unicorn here in Malaysia. I don't think there's time for the video, but yeah, looking forward to engage with you in this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. So today we have panelists from 4 countries in Southeast Asian countries. So looking at the startup investment in Southeast Asian countries, we can see the continued downward trend in the investment in startup for over maybe past 4 years, right? So that is something called the tech winter. It's not limited to the Southeast Asian country, but across the world. So I want to ask this question to all the panelists here. So in this situation, how do you see the current trend or the emerging opportunity in your respective country? Is there any positive news we should pay attention? So can you start the answer by you?
Okay, thank you, Machi-san. So we know that for the past few years, there's a tech winters, right? Indonesia, Southeast Asia, and almost around the globe. But if you read the news, the Living Life Ventures still aggressively do investment on the season. Why? Because we have 2 reasons. Number one, on this tech winter, we see an opportunity. There's a new revaluation on the startup, right? So which one is over the valuation, the below valuation, but we can keep the startup at the real valuation with the same performance. That's number one. Number two, also because we are coming from the corporate venture capital of Sinamas Land, we are looking for the strategic collaboration into the startup. Because there's a lot of innovation that for us will be taking 10 years, 15 years, right? To get this kind of innovation through startup that much more agile than a corporation. This is a very great value for us. So we see a value from the startup to give a value to our corporation, but on the same token, because we have a closed loop ecosystem such as BSD City, this ecosystem also giving a value for the startup, becoming a captive market for the startup. So that's why we see there's a mutual benefit between the relationship, the investors, and also the startup. This is the main reason Living Life Ventures still aggressively investing into a tech company.
Great. So how about Matt?
Right, trends, right, in the market I'm seeing. So I think the last 10 years, we've seen digitalization happening across different industries, healthcare, education, property even. And the Malaysian government has been doing quite a bit to also bring in startups from overseas, to set up a shop in Malaysia. And I guess the venture industry has been growing quite a bit from when I came 16 years ago, when it was literally ground zero and didn't have like angel investors, the VC climate was not there yet, to now being something that's very vibrant. Now, one of the things I'm seeing recently is on the data centers, right? So there is a huge trend and a huge push in Malaysia to build up the AI infrastructure, right? It's literally every day I can hear the news of a new data center being started. Now, what's interesting about that, and maybe what kind of opportunities that can present to the startups, is that, of course, in Malaysia, where energy is still relatively cheap, right? We can actually afford to do this kind of business. But what we need really is to make those data centers run more efficiently. So technologies, deep tech, like quantum technologies or cooling technologies, right, can really help to run those centers more efficiently, would help tremendously, not just from a business and an operation perspective, but also from a sustainability perspective. And that's where we see, when it comes to climate tech, in terms of sustainability, that presents a huge opportunity to do something in Malaysia.
Great. So how about you, Vic?
Thank you, Majisan. So the private capital market in Vietnam has gone through different stages, but the VC market in Vietnam was relatively young. It's just getting started. And the first tipping point happened around 2019. So last year, the total private capital investment in Vietnam, including both PE and VC, was around $2.3 billion. And VC alone was only 20% of that, which is around $400 million. So that's how small the market is. But it's growing very fast. And when the market was booming, we see a lot of investment poured into retail, payment, financial services. But when the market slowed down a bit for the past few years, the superstar industry was actually healthcare, education. And last year, we saw an unprecedented number of investment into business automation, namely AI. So AI last year, the number of investment increased 8 times compared with the year before. And we started to hear news about big corporations like NVIDIA acquiring startups in Vietnam like VinBrain. And recently, Qualcomm also making an acquisition of VinAI. And the goal of these corporations is to build R&D centers in Vietnam. And the segment that I want to highlight is climate tech. So for the past few years, we've seen a rising numbers of investment into the climate space. And I think Vietnam is a great country for applying technology into the climate angles and to make sure that we can grow sustainably as a country as well.
Interesting. Thank you. So how about in Singapore?
Yeah. So Singapore is not immune to the broader global or Southeast Asia trend. So generally, as you know, there is a startup fundraising winter, lack of exits for Southeast Asia startups, and because of that, VCs cannot raise new money, and as a result, cannot recycle cash and invest in new startups. So for ST Engineering Ventures, we actually invest on a global basis. So we invest in US, Europe, as well as Southeast Asia. And from what we have seen is that typically for Southeast Asian startup ecosystem, it is usually 6 to 9 months behind the US. And even today in the US, when we talk about exits being pushed back, right? Before Liberation Day a month ago, we're talking about second half of 2025 being a good exit opportunity. But it seems that that's going to push by another 2 or 3 quarters to 2026 next year. So as a result, for Southeast Asia itself, you're going to see that being continue to snowballing. So it's not a good sign. But the good thing about on the Singapore side is that other than VC funding, which is has come out quite a bit, but actually the government itself, as you know, Singapore has a very supportive government to the startup ecosystem through Economic Development Board as well as the Enterprise Singapore. So essentially, they have been trying to change the kind of startups that will thrive well in Singapore. So in the past, Singapore, as you know, is very strong in fintech, blockchain, platform technologies, e-commerce and stuff like that. But increasingly, if you are a Japanese startup that is looking at deep tech, you are in luck, because that's where the Singapore government is looking at trying to grow the next crop of startup within Singapore itself. So if you are in areas like, for example, biotech, healthcare, semicon, quantum, things like that, robotics, you're in luck, because that is where the government has a lot of schemes and a lot of non-dilutive funding to try to sustain these startups before the VC fund raising environment actually comes back. So Singapore is not a big country, but we have 4,500 startups within Singapore itself. Last year, there were about $5 billion US in terms of VC funding that has gone into the Singapore startup ecosystem, of which about $1 billion is into deep tech startups. And going forward, you can see the portion that's going into the deep tech segment going to continue to increase, and the number of deep tech VCs and stuff like that will continue to. Because the thing about deep tech is that deep tech is not reliant on local VCs. Deep tech is a global game, so you have global VCs coming in. In fact, just this week, there's Equal Prosperity Week happening in Singapore. So, there are a lot of corporate VCs from the US, from Europe, who's actually in Singapore attending the event today. And these are the VCs who will continue to, invest in a lot of the deep tech sectors that we talk about. So, so it really depends for the startup, which sector you're in. If you're in deep tech, generally you're quite okay.
Great, thank you. So as they shared in the introduction session, the two CBC, Living Lab and Sunway iLab, are driving the large-scale smart city initiative and utilizing the cutting technology. So I want to ask you the question. So can you share a remarkable case of collaboration with Japanese startups in your smart city initiative? So can you start from Matt, please?
Me first, okay, yeah. Well, interestingly, this came to my mind. Last time I was in Japan was in February 2020. So then the next month, the whole world went into lockdown. That was also the start of our first program with Jetro. So the first part, we did it offline. We saw a lot of companies coming to Malaysia, but then we had to transition into like an online mode. Well, interestingly, we had, I think it was the first batch, was a Japanese company called Toy8. And Toy8 is an education technology company, participated in a program. And when they came to us, they had a very interesting AI tool, when AI was not as hot as it is today. But that AI could power up a psychometric test that they could deploy in primary schools and in preschools, and could really help parents to assess developmental delays in children. So we thought that's a really interesting technology that could align very well with our education group. And so during the program, during the mentor sessions that we had with them, we kind of figure out how do we take a technology that worked really well in Japan into the Malaysian market, right? Because oftentimes it doesn't apply in the same way. We need to localize it. So we need to localize it for the right language. Even though most people in Malaysia would speak English, we also localize it for the Bahasa Malaysia language. Then what we said was well, let's offer this tool in our own preschools. Let's test it out. So we offered it to parents who send their little children to our preschools, get feedback for them, and really see again how to tweak the product a little bit so that it works better for a Malaysian audience. So all the program, spent about 6 months with them. And then they set up a center in Malaysia because they realized that this cannot be an online business. You have the technology, but you still need to have the face-to-face with the parents, right? And really to see what kind of impact it has in the market. So now I think they are in Indonesia. They expanded to the Philippines with the help of Jetro office as well. And we really love them, not just because it's great technology, and Japan always bring very good technology, but it has a huge impact on the education, right? So hopefully that's a good example, right?
Great. Thank you for sharing. So, Bayu, please.
Thank you, Machi-san. So, working with Japan corporation, they are looking on two things from my point of view, right? The vision of the company, but the most important thing is the long-term commitment of the company. Mostly Japan corporation look at the long-term commitment of the company. And for the past decades, Siramas Group have several JV with Japan corporation for the past 25 until 30 years. We have a JV with Sojitz to create an industrial estate. We have a JV with Itochu. We have a JV with Mitsubishi Corporation. We have a JV with Hankyu Hanshin. We have a JV with Mitsui. We have a JV with Sumitomo, right? And it happened not for the past 5-10 years, but 20 until 30 years, which means the Japanese corporation believe on the commitment that we give. And this kind of DNA also goes into Living Life Ventures. So we engage quite a lot Japan corporation. For example, Machi-san, currently we are working with a company named Nitto Denko. It's a Japanese company. There's a gap on innovation in Indonesia. Nitto Denko, we are working with the R&D centers. They are creating a lot of IP, patent here. And then, what is the next? They want to monetize and do a co-creation of their product, of their IP in one of the largest market, Indonesia. So they come to us. We are working with them. We do a IP monetization. So we are creating a 2 cohort, 1 cohort 6 months. So accelerate the IP, do some business matching with the local startup to find a co-creation partner in Indonesia. So, and then the partners can help to monetize the IP in the markets. Because local will do the ground, the company just like Nito Denko will do all innovation and bring the patent to here. So that's also the example on the ventures things, what we are doing with the Japan corporation, Nito Denko.
Great. Thank you, Bayo. So, as Tan introduced, the ST engineering actively utilize AI to develop the new technology. So I want to ask you, can you share any the case study or example of a collaboration between the ST engineering venture and deep tech startups? So can you share any?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Before I answer the question, maybe let me take a step back. So why would a startup would want to work with a company like ST Engineering? So for us, in many of our businesses, as you can see, across defense and public security, across smart cities, as well as across commercial aerospace, we do system integration. So we are a system integrator. So essentially, when we work with deep tech startups in sectors that we are good in, we can deliver 3 value to the deep tech startup. One is that, for many of the deep tech startups, you have point solutions, but you cannot sell a point solution to the end customer. You need to integrate that in a broader system. And that's where a prime contractor like us come in. We integrate your point solution into an overall solution before we sell it to the end customer. Second is that for ST Engineering, we have, in terms of our markets, we are very strong in Asia, we are very strong in Middle East. So we can actually help startups, let's say from Japan, to accelerate their go-to-market very quickly in whether it's in Asia or whether it's in the Middle East, where we have strong markets. We are also very strong in the US. 20% of our revenues are from there. And the third area where we can actually work with startups is that in terms of co-development of IP, R&D. Because we have 90,000 engineers behind us, so basically for areas that are less core to you, which is probably phase 2, phase 3 on your own R&D plan, we can actually work with you to accelerate that and co-develop products together and then co-go to market together. So that's how we actually work with startups. And in terms of the AI, how do we work with, what type of AI startups do we work with or look at? So, for example, for us, we do not do foundational AI. Because we are system integrator, we are very close to customers. So we always develop use cases, applications with our end customers. AI is just something that we've always been doing, but has become very fancy over the last 2-3 years. So essentially, when we talk about AI, we look at AI in 5 areas in terms of our businesses. One, we look at AI in terms of critical operations, in terms of platforms, in terms of autonomous systems, in terms of products and services, and in terms of productivities. This is how we look at AI in these 5 areas relating to our business. And that's where, for any of the startups that's out there who want to work with us, you can actually plug into these 5 areas. Very short, I'll go into each one very shortly. Critical operations. For example, in Singapore, we actually developed the hospital operation center, airport operation centers, security operations centers, stuff like that. Each of which requires AI. So whether you're a cyber AI, you're a cyber startup, or you're an AI startup that can plug yourself in, we are more than welcome to sort of collaborate with us. In terms of platforms, we build platforms in Singapore, whether it's air, land, or sea platforms. So on the defense side, we build our own armored fighting vehicles. On the marine side, we build ships. As well as on the aircraft side, we do a lot of MRO work. So each part requires AI, whether you're doing MRO work or stuff like that. Third is in the area of autonomous systems. So we build unmanned ground vehicles, air, land, and sea, unmanned underwater vehicles, surface vessels, as well as UAVs. So for any startups that wants to plug certain solution into these platforms, we are more than happy to work with you. And lastly is in the area of product and services. So we do have our own product and services, whether it's AI-enabled CCTVs or, for example, we do sort of like AI verification services to our customers and stuff like that. So we do not work in isolation because the whole breadth of AI is so wide. So we always look for partners. So if any of the startups out there have certain solutions that you want to work with us on, we'll be happy to talk about it after this session. Yeah, thank you.
Good, thank you. So different from other 3 panelists, so B from Do Venture. Do Venture is the sector agnostic venture capital, no CVC. So I understand you have a wide range of portfolio in the Vietnamese startups. And I think that some of the Vietnamese startups are collaborating with Japanese companies. So can you share any example? And if you have any expectation for Japanese company, can you share your thoughts?
I think Vietnam is still a developing nation, but we are very fortunate because we have 100 million population and very young population. So the average age in Vietnam is about 32 years old. And we also have a rising consumer class. Because of that, over the past 5 years, we try to invest in companies that can build a very effective distribution network. So one of the companies that we invested about 3 years ago, they are now the largest live streaming commerce company in Vietnam and also in South Asia. Every month, they would deliver about 3 to 4 million orders. And basically, we actively trying to work with Japanese brand and bring high quality Japanese brand to the rising consumer class in Vietnam. So that is one area we actively look at. Secondly is Vietnam education sector is still relatively new, but it's growing rapidly. And in terms of market share, we also have about 25% market share of all students and teachers in Vietnam. And we actively look at how we can bring Japanese education program to the Vietnam market. And on the other hand, I think when you look at the financial market in Vietnam, it's still relatively young. We also invested in a platform called FinHay, and I think it's still new, but they gather the interest from the young investor, young professional, who just invest for the first time. And over the past 5 years, they also increased their AUM to about a few $100 million, and they have close to 300,000 active investors in the platform. And what we realize is we need to work with Japanese financial institutions to co-create new products that can serve this growing young investor in Vietnam. And we realize that there's a lot of opportunities because the interest rate in Japan is really low. And we can definitely create more products that can benefit both the investor side in Japan and also the young investor side in Vietnam as well. So those are examples of some of the areas we work with. And recently, when we talk about AI, I think one of the advantages for Vietnam is that we have a huge talent pool that trying to learn and apply AI. And the salary of AI engineers in Vietnam is also relatively low. So we now actively look at how we can bring these talents to work with Japanese corporations and create new products that serve global markets.
Thanks, Pete. So I have much more questions I want to ask you, but it's almost time to conclude the session. But I want to ask you if there's anything you want to emphasize to the audience, can you share a very short, quick message? So from Tim, please.
We are very happy to collaborate with any startup. So, please, after this session, please come to me if you're interested to work with SK Engineering, both to, get out of Japan, to first of all get a foothold in Singapore, actually, or to go to the Middle East or the US. That's where our strong markets are. Yeah. So happy collaboration.
Yeah, I think all the meaningful relationships should start with something small first. I'm a big fan of Japanese food culture. So anyone that visits Vietnam, want to learn about Vietnamese food culture, I'm willing to host you guys. And vice versa, I would love to, try some Japanese food and coffee in Japan. Just exchange ideas, and hopefully we'll be able to find more meaningful relationship in the future.
So I'm going to say something less conventional. I'm not making the same mistake like 2 years ago. When I was in London Tech Week, gave a lot of information about Sunway, a lot of technical information, and there was an Indonesian guy sitting next to me, like now, who said, next week there's a beach event in Bali, please come, and everyone went to that guy. So I'm going to say this, we're going to have our own beach event in October, focus on deep tech and AI. So please, I invite you all to come, have a good conversation. And for the Japanese companies who are in the rice, wine business and the sake business, please bring some good sake as well, because we don't have any in Malaysia.
Bye.
So for me, I would like to promoting my Japan thematic fund is the right channel to do localization in Southeast Asia. I grew up by Japan innovation, Sony Walkman, I playing SNK. So I'm calling all my Japan friends, let's shake and enjoy one of the most growing region with more than 800 million population named Southeast Asia. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you so much for joining us today. I believe this session was incredible, insightful, and valuable discussion. So once again, thank you so much for joining all the panelists. And please join me in giving a big round of applause to wonderful panelists today. Thank you so much.
ご登壇いただきました皆様ありがとうございました。Let's give a round of applause to all of our wonderful speakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
We're going to be
Nice.
taking a quick
Thanks.
break for the speech preparation. We're scheduled to resume at 3 p.m. So please return to your seats by then. Thank you very much for your cooperation.